European robin weighs 12 grams. Less than a letter you would put in the post. Less than 4 sheets of paper. Light enough that you can hold one in a cupped hand and barely feel it there. This bird navigates more than 2,000 kilometers across continents, from northern Europe to southern Spain or Portugal in the dark, crossing mountain ranges and coastlines and open sea, arriving at its destination with a precision that would embarrass the GPS navigation system in your car. It does this without a map. Without stars, it navigates even on completely overcast nights, without any landmark it has ever seen. What it uses instead is something that, until very recently, scientists were not sure could exist in a living organism. Quantum physics. Not as a metaphor, not as a loose analogy. Actual quantum mechanical processes, the same counterintuitive mathematics that describes the behavior of particles at the subatomic level happening inside a protein in the robin's eye. Every second it is in flight, giving it the ability to perceive the geometry of the Earth's magnetic field as a visual overlay on everything it sees. The robin does not just sense the magnetic field. Current evidence suggests it may literally see it as a pattern superimposed on its visual field, a compass made of light and quantum probability built directly into its retina. That has been operating in birds for millions of years, and that scientists have only just confirmed exists. This is one of the most extraordinary scientific stories of the 21st century. It rewrites what we thought was possible in a living cell. It opens a field of science, quantum biology, that did not exist as a serious discipline 30 years ago. And it all starts with a 12-gram bird that somehow knows exactly where south is. Let's start with the problem. Every spring and autumn, billions of birds migrate across the planet, some traveling thousands of kilometers between breeding and wintering grounds, navigating at night, crossing terrain they may never have seen before, arriving at locations with extraordinary accuracy. A Bartheld godwit flies 12,000 kilometers non-stop from Alaska to New Zealand. An Arctic tern travels from pole to pole. A European robin navigates from Scandinavia to Iberia and back every single year. How they do this has puzzled scientists for centuries. The obvious candidates were tried and mostly confirmed as partial explanations. Birds use the stars on clear nights, confirmed. They use the sun as a compass during the day, confirmed. They use familiar landmarks when available, confirmed. They can smell their way to some destinations, confer for some species. But none of these explains how the robin navigates on completely overcast nights with no stars, no moon, no familiar terrain, and no detectable sync gradient. Something else is happening. Something more fundamental. In 1958, a German biologist named Friedrich Merkel and his student Hans Fromm noticed something strange. European robins kept in outdoor cages showed directed migratory restlessness. They hopped and fluttered in the direction they would normally migrate, even when there was complete cloud cover and they could see no stars. Something was giving them directional information that did not come from light or smell or familiar landmarks. By 1968, Wolfgang and Roswitha Wilczko had identified what that something was. In a series of elegant experiments, they showed that European robins were using the Earth's magnetic field to orient themselves. They could detect magnetic north. They had an internal compass. But here is where it got strange. When the Wilczkos examined how the compass worked, it did not behave like any compass they understood. A conventional compass, like the one in a smartphone or on a hiker's wrist, detects the polarity of the magnetic field. It knows north from south because the field points in one direction. The robin's compass did not work this way. It could not distinguish north from south based on polarity. What it detected was the inclination of the field, the angle at which magnetic field lines dip into the Earth relative to the surface. At the equator, the lines run roughly horizontal. Near the poles, they dip steeply. The robin was somehow reading that geometry rather than that polarity. That is not how a conventional compass works. It is not how any known sensing organ works. It was the first clue that something very unusual was happening inside the robin's eye. The explanation that eventually emerged did not come from biology. It came from physics, specifically from a physicist named Klaus Shelton, who, in 1978, proposed something that most of his colleagues considered him. He suggested that birds might be using a quantum mechanical phenomenon called the radical pair mechanism to sense the Earth's magnetic field. And he suggested that this was happening inside a protein in the bird's eye called cryptochrome. To understand what Shelton was proposing, you need to understand two things about quantum physics that make it categorically different from the physics of everyday life. The first is electron spin. Every electron has a quantum property called spin. Not a physical rotation, but a quantum state that can be either up or down, This spin state gives the electron a tiny magnetic moment, a sensitivity to magnetic fields. Two electrons can form what is called a radical pair, where their spins are quantum mechanically linked. The key property of a radical pair is that the relative spin states of the two electrons, whether they are in a singlet state with spins antiparallel or a triplet state with spins parallel, influences the chemical reaction the electrons participate in. The second is that the Earth's magnetic field, even though it is extraordinarily weak, far weaker than the magnet on your refrigerator, can influence the balance between those singlet and triplet spin states. The field is too weak to affect most chemistry. But in a radical pair, operating at the quantum level, it is exactly the right scale to tip the balance. What Schulten proposed was this: when light hits the cryptochrome protein in a bird's eye, it triggers the formation of a radical pair. The relative spin states of those electrons, and therefore the chemical products the reaction produces, are influenced by the direction of the Earth's magnetic field relative to the bird's orientation. Different products are produced when the bird faces different directions. Those different products produce different signals in the bird's neurons, and the bird's brain, reading those signals, knows which way it is facing relative to the Earth's magnetic field lines. A quantum chemical compass running continuously in the living cells of a bird's eye, too small to see, too counterintuitive to believe. And when Schulten proposed it in 1978, entirely unproven, it took 43 years to confirm it. The breakthrough came in 2021, published in the journal Nature by a team from the University of Oldenburg in Germany and Oxford University in the UK. The specific protein is Cryptochrome, for CRY4. It is found in the retinas of migratory songbirds. It is concentrated specifically in the double cone and long wavelength single cone photoreceptors, the cells most active under daylight conditions. It is constitutively expressed, meaning its levels stay constant around the clock. Unlike other cryptochromes that rise and fall with the circadian rhythm, it is always switched on. The Oxford and Oldenburg team extracted Cry4 from European robins and tested it in the laboratory. They hit it with blue laser light, because the mechanism requires light of specific wavelengths to initiate, and measured what happened. The results were unambiguous. The robin's Cry4 responded to magnetic fields. When a magnetic field was applied, it changed the amount of light the protein absorbed, a direct sign that the magnetic field was affecting the quantum spin states of the radical pair and altering the chemical products the protein produced. Then they performed the same test on Cry4 from non-migratory chickens and pigeons. The magnetic field had little effect on their cryptochrome. The migratory species had a magnetically sensitive quantum compass in its eye. The non-migratory species did not. The correlation was exact. Our measurements showed that electrons move within the molecule and are magnetically sensitive exactly as it had been predicted by quantum mechanical theory decades ago, said the Oldenburg team. The measurements are the clearest evidence yet of quantum physics playing a direct role in protein dynamics. Qingjing Su, one of the lead researchers, summarized the significance simply. No one could confirm this experimentally before this study. Now they had. Here's where it becomes genuinely mine. The compass in the robin's eye is not just a sensor that gives a simple north-south reading. The current evidence suggests the magnetic information is integrated directly into the bird's visual processing. The cryptochrome proteins are in the photoreceptors, the same cells that process light to produce vision. The radical pair reactions produce chemical signals that feed into the same neural pathways as visual information. The working hypothesis, supported by the distribution of cryptochrome in the retina and by behavioral experiments showing the compass is light-dependent, is that the robin does not experience the magnetic field as a separate sense, the way a human feels touch is distinct from sight. It may experience it as a visual pattern, an overlay on its visual field, a shading or brightening in the direction of magnetic inclination that shifts as the bird turns its head. Enric Moritzin, one of the world's leading researchers on avian magnetoreception at the University of Oldenburg, has described it this way. The Ravi may literally see the magnetic field as a pattern superimposed on its normal vision, not infer it, not feel it, see it. If that is correct, and the evidence increasingly points that way, then the European robin experiences the world with a visual sense that no human has ever had, and that no human technology currently replicates. It sees the geometry of a planetary magnetic field, rendered as light, using a quantum process so delicate that it can be disrupted by electromagnetic noise thousands of times weaker than what international safety standards consider harmful to humans. That last point is one of the most alarming findings to emerge from this research. Man-made alternating fields disrupt this mechanism not by being too powerful, but by being structurally wrong. Generating enough electromagnetic noise to jam the quantum coherence the compass depends on at intensities orders of magnitude below any thermal threshold. In cities, with their dense electromagnetic environment of Wi-Fi, radio signals, power lines, and electronic devices, European robins show measurably impaired magnetic orientation. A 2014 study in Nature showed that urban electromagnetic noise disrupted the robin's compass even when the fields were 1,000 times weaker than international safety guidelines allow. The bird's quantum compass is so sensitive that human technology running well within the limits we consider safe interferes with it. This discovery opened a field. Quantum biology, the study of quantum mechanical processes in living organisms, barely existed as a serious discipline before the firehawk turned out to be real and the robin's compass turned out to be quantum. It now does. It encompasses the robin's compass. The quantum coherence effects in photosynthesis that allow plants to transfer energy through leaves with near perfect efficiency, and the proposed quantum mechanisms in the human sense of smell. Living organisms, it turns out, are not just chemistry happening on top of physics. They are, in some cases, directly harnessing quantum effects that scientists once assumed were too fragile to survive the warm, wet, noisy environment of a biological cell. The robin did not read the textbooks that said quantum coherence collapses almost instantaneously at biological temperatures. It simply evolved a protein that works anyway. The ERC-funded Quantum Birds project, a collaboration between the University of Oldenburg and Oxford, is continuing to investigate the mechanism with increasing precision. A 2024 paper confirmed that Acryphora, the specific Cryptochrome variant in the European robin, interacts with the membrane structure of the photoreceptor cells in an organized, anisotropic way, meaning it is not just present in those cells, but is physically oriented in a way that maximizes its magnetic sensitivity. The compass is not accidental, it is exquisitely engineered by over millions of years. A 12-gram bird with a quantum compass in its eye, navigating 2,000 kilometers in the dark, seeing the Earth's magnetic field as a pattern of light overlaid on everything else it sees. The robin lands in your garden every winter, hops along the lawn, tilts its head in that way robins do, and you have probably never considered that what it is doing when it tilts that head is rotating a quantum sensor toward an angle that gives it the clearest reading of the Earth's magnetic field. It is the most technologically sophisticated navigation system on the planet. It fits in an organism the weight of a letter. It runs on blue light and quantum probability, and it has been doing so for millions of years in billions of birds, quietly and perfectly. While we built GPS and called ourselves the most sophisticated navigators on Earth, we are not the most sophisticated navigators on Earth. We never were. If this story changed how you see a robin sitting on your garden fence, share it, because quantum biology is one of the most extraordinary frontiers in science right now, and the bird that opened the door to it is the most common one in European gardens. Subscribe, because next week the true story will be just as extraordinary and just as close to home.